Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can I ask the clerk to take the roll, please?
Councilman Gavarecki.
Present.
Councilman Templin.
Present.
Councilman Cisco.
Present.
Councilman Hayes.
Present.
Councilman DeGiulio.
Here.
Councilman Keenan.
Here.
And Treasurer Armstrong.
Here.
And Mayor Mategas.
Present.
We have a quorum, sir. Excuse me.
Ladies and gentlemen, as you know from looking at the agenda, it's a single item tonight, and it relates to a severance package and the termination of employment for the President's City Administrator, Karen Folks. And we are going to take citizens' comments before the council debates the package. And so if you'll just bear with me, I'll go through the rules that we use for your speaking to us tonight. Individual may only speak on an issue after the individual has been recognized by the chairperson. Comments from the floor shall be made at the podium at the front of the council table. Prior to an individual speaking from the floor, the individual shall identify themselves and state their address for record. We just ask that you state your street. All comments shall be directed only to the chairperson. Speakers are not to address other members of the council or members of the audience. Each member of the public may speak for up to 4 minutes. All written statements should be given to the city clerk prior to the meeting so that copies may be made available to members of the public body. No individual shall be allowed to make any defamatory attack or invasion of another individual's personal life. There should be no questions, comments, discussions, or attacks regarding anybody's personal life. The chairperson shall immediately rule out of order any person who begins to bring up such issues. If the chairperson does not do so, any member of the council may call for a point of order requesting the chairperson rule the offending party out of order. If the chairperson does not so rule the offending party out of the order, the council may call for an appeal of the decision. If the chairperson's decision is overturned, the offending person shall be deemed as being out of order. If the person is allowed to continue to make comments, the person who is being challenged shall be entitled to immediate rebuttal. For purposes of these rules, as they relate to elected officials or city officials, the term personal life shall refer to anything other than that which is said or done in the person's official capacity as an elected official or in the person's official city capacity. Members of the public body may question the speakers, but the members of the public body are not obligated to answer any questions or make any statements on the issue raised or discussed by the speaker. Issues may be referred to the appropriate body, department, or individual for investigation and review. No person or group shall be allowed to disrupt the meetings or proceedings. Any individual who fails to comply with these rules after having been warned by the chair to cease such actions shall be ordered by the chair to leave and or be ejected from the meeting. So please, let's try, this is a item that we all have strong feelings about, but let's
Mr. Mayor, if we could,
civil.
before we open up the floor, just in an effort to be able to allow the citizens to come up and ask questions, if this document has not been made public, perhaps we could read some highlights so that at least they have a starting point to have conversation, to know what they're talking about.
Well, it's a good suggestion, and maybe the best way to do is have our city attorney explain the document to all of us, and then we'll go to citizens' comments. So if you just bear with us while we have those comments made by our council, we will then go. Thank you, Bob.
Good evening. Some weeks ago, this council took action to terminate the city administrator. The city is still subject to state control, and the powers that be responded to that after some negotiations back and forth, and came back and basically said, you negotiate if you want her to be terminated, you're going to have to negotiate a settlement with her a severance agreement. So as a result of that, Mayor and some members of the council instituted some discussions with the state, and then they tasked the city attorney's office to, in fact, the order from the state was have counsel from the city negotiate with counsel for the city administrator. So we have done that. We've gone back and forth on many points, but we bring before council today a proposed agreement. The contract which which the city administrator had entered into provided for a 6-month severance package, and then there was also some orders in place, and quite frankly, the orders and the contract, there was some conflicting language in those. Nonetheless, we worked through some issues, and the settlement really amounts to paying her a $47,500, also $7,000 for a full release for the city and all its employees and officers, and she would also be entitled to receive her both the employer and employee contributions in the city's MERS administrated contribution plan. We have a pending bond tender transaction that is going on. The state also recommended that she continue in that capacity to assist the city in doing that. So we've worked out an hourly package for her to work out to provide services not to exceed 10 hours per week, and that would that's going to terminate when the bond transaction is completed, or May 31st, whichever is later. I'm sorry? Earlier, I'm sorry. Thank you. And this proposed settlement is subject to approval by the RTAB, and if it is approved by then, it would then take effect on the day that they approve it. So this needs to be approved by the state. So the first step is get it approved by council here.
I'll do a walkthrough.
Well, does that fairly summarize?
I think that's the highlights. I don't know that we necessarily need to do a walkthrough of each individual point unless.
No, I was.
No, I don't.
I was going to do something else,
Yeah.
just for the
Okay.
citizens. But I'm going to, and I'll do this before the thing comes up for motion and vote. Just so you understand the whole time frame in which this was conducted. About January 13th, Councilman Cisco and Templin approached the city administrator, Karen Folks, and told her that a number of the council persons were dissatisfied with her performance and that they thought that it would be appropriate if she would resign. About the 20th, I was aware of that. I also talked with her and suggested that if she would consider resigning, it would work best if she retained counsel at that point and immediately contacted our council so the agreement could be worked out and we'd avoid the emotional aspect of the principals trying to negotiate directly. That didn't occur. So on the 27th of January, the council at its regular meeting entered into a resolution that was 7-0, and it indicated that they would suspend the city administrator until RTAB and Treasury had approved the action, and that they had asked that a temporary administrator be put in place, being Robert Cady, our chief financial officer, and that on a vote by the RTAB that they thought was a conflict of interest, and that Joyce Parker, our former EM, not be allowed to vote on this matter. That, as I said, passed. January 28th, the fax letter from Wayne Workman, the Deputy State Treasurer, came and said our action's a nullity under the state law, the RTAB rules, and the emergency manager's orders, and that no action could be taken. We were then had a telephone conference call between Mr. Workman and Mr. Carisno, who works for him, along with Mr. Keenan, Mr. Cisco, and myself, to discuss our actions for the removal. They've said, well, please come and meet with us in Lansing on February 2nd and bring all of your reasons that you think a just cause dismissal is appropriate. I asked the council to submit those. We had those submitted to me, and unfortunately, January 2nd was the second biggest snowfall we ever had. So we adjourned to January 5th. At that time, the three of us went up and met with Mr. Workman, Ed Carisno of his office, Randall Byrne of their office, and Eric Klein, who many of you, if you've been to an RTAB meeting, know is the secretary to RTAB, but he is in the treasurer's office. They told us that by the week of February 13th, they would have a plan or process for us on this matter. We talked to them. Of course, they'd had that point. They'd reviewed our materials about the performance of the city administrator. And so they came down here on the 17th and 18th and conducted interviews with our department heads. On the 19th, Mr. Klein and Mr. Byrne, talking to Mr. Keenan, Mr. Cisco, and myself, said that they thought a transition to a new city administrator was appropriate, but it would have to be a voluntary agreement and would have to be made by the city. And then on February 24th, we were directed that we must obtain that agreement and that it should be obtained by the time of the next RTAB meeting. On the 27th, we were told by Carisno and Byrne at a meeting that they had reviewed all of the materials submitted in the interviews. They did not feel that we had shown just cause. We indicated that we were willing to negotiate, but we didn't have the name of an attorney, and finally we got the name of the attorney, and Mr. Covier, and that got started. Also, I was directed by the state that I was to call, or Mr. Covier was to call me every day and tell us if there was any delays in the negotiations. But they wanted to know that we were pressing those negotiations. I will say at this point, I think Joe Covier has done a wonderful job for the city in getting this done in a short space of time. And being a lawyer, you know when the other side knows that they're going to be given a great sum of money, and we can't stop that. It's hard to negotiate what you would consider a pretty good deal, but I think Mr. Covier has done a good job, and we have a settlement agreement, which I certainly am going to recommend that we accept tonight. We were told finally, 22 hours in advance of that RTAB meeting that took place in Lansing yesterday, that we'd reached an agreement, and at our Tuesday night meeting, the council scheduled tonight's meeting. Today, Karen Folk and Treasury has said that RTAB must approve and that her resignation would not be effective until RTAB approved, and you heard the statement that RTAB would, that it would terminate at 4:30 on the day RTAB held their meeting and passed gave their approval to this agreement. Mr. Klein, who is the RTAB secretary, said that he would schedule in Allen Park the RTAB meeting for next Wednesday or Thursday. It was late in the day. They have some sick people up there, and he has to, of course, contact Ms. Schaefer, Ms. Parker, Ms. Barron, and Mr. Frank and get a date that they can all come in to meet. When I was there yesterday, I told them we were going to need a special meeting for this next week, and they all appeared to say that they could make themselves available, so we're very hopeful that that will occur. So that's how we got to tonight's place and the agreement before the council. So I've read you the rules of decorum, and I would ask the citizens who wish to come forward and comment if they wish.
Can I just highlight a couple of things real quick before we do that, or do you want me to wait till?
Why don't you wait until we...
Okay, I thought it might be beneficial to the discussion that we'd have with them, but you're the chair.
So if I have any comments by citizens, would they come forward at this time? Whoops.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lloyd. Good evening, everybody. Al Wojcinski, Vine Avenue. Okay, we are negotiating a severance package for Mrs. Folks. We're paying for it, correct?
Yes.
And that amounts to $54,500.
I'll accept your addition.
Okay. Now, is that going to be a lump sum payment?
Yes.
The attorney said yes. Why don't we just spread it out over 24 months? So the city doesn't take the big hit all at once. Spread it out. And how much will she be paid for those 10 hours a week that she works here?
$52.20 an hour.
That is a good rate of pay for, never mind.
That's her current hourly rate.
Oh, it is?
Yes.
Well, I still say that the severance pay should be paid over 2 years, not all of a sudden. It's just, it's fair to the city and the citizens. You know, carry it as a current debt instead of all of a sudden at once and we got to short something else. Other than that, I am glad to see you're gone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Bob Lloyd, Robinson Avenue. I understand they're going to have an RTAB meeting in Elm Park next week, or attempt to, correct?
Yes.
But essentially, this council was given the ultimatum that they must approve the agreement tonight in order for it to take effect. Is that correct? You're voting on this tonight?
Correct.
We are going to vote on this tonight.
And if you vote no, then she's not removed, correct?
Well, there may be a counter proposal that would have to go to them and their council and would have to come back to this council on a Tuesday night meeting, Mr. Lloyd. I mean,
I guess
it's a possibility. I'm hopeful we don't have to go that way because negotiating this was no easy task by our councils.
And I understand that, and that brings me to my second point. The meeting being in Lansing, and I think I've made it clear through emails to members of the council and other members of this government that to move that meeting to Lansing violates the Open Meetings Act. And I think it's clear. The law itself states that the meeting must be held in public, and that's it. But our Attorney General, Bill Schuette, explains what that means in his little handbook. And gosh, I don't agree with Mr. Schuette very often. But what he explains is that if it's moved at a distance that makes it inconvenient or improbable for citizens affected to attend, that's violation of the act. I think moving it 200 miles away with less than a 2-day notice, I know it was enough time, but I'm not sure what it was. I don't think that that was convenient for me to attend. And I don't know how I can speak here to you about an agreement that I didn't have any opportunity to witness it being discussed, it negotiated, and I know we got some details here, but That's just, it's just a number of things. They just keep building and building and building. You know, we are not, as citizens of Allen Park, given much of an opportunity to know much about what's going on or have an opportunity to really have say in what's going on. I believe that she cut all your salaries in half, didn't she? Was that one of her actions?
Joyce Parker's, yes.
Ms. Parker.
Ms. Parker. And I think roughly maybe 24 grand a year that saved. Is that fair to say?
$2,250 per councilman and 15.
Oh, so less than that. So over the 2 years, that's going to be much less what we've saved in cutting your salaries for 2 years than what we must give Ms. Folks in severance package. Not to mention our police who have been trampled on. They're forced to take huge cuts. You know, everybody's supposed to have a shared sacrifice, but the state brings someone in and they're expected to get a bonus. And I'm sorry, I cannot tolerate it. I really can't. I'm tired of it. I've let my feelings be known before about the whole idea of an emergency manager, and it has mushroomed as far as I'm concerned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Charles Glenn in Champaign. First off, good job. From pretty much yesterday shows how, since she's been here, how things have been, like, not giving us information as in, like, of anything. And moving it to Lansing just shows that it is inconvenient for the citizens of Allen Park. By any chance, was she, if I was hearing right, was she told to not be here today because of the RTAB thing, or is it just because?
Her lawyer notified us that she would not be here tonight.
Okay, so you were paying her to not be here, representing, even though, like, if I don't know, it just.
She was at work today, by the way.
Okay, thank you. Personally, it's just, I feel like us citizens, and I know we're all citizens up here, we did not choose her as an administrator. We shouldn't have to pay her. The person that did choose her should be the one to pay her. That's just my opinion. I'm not sure if I was hearing, do we have I know you were saying temporary new city administrator when she's gone. Do you guys have a plan for a permanent city administrator for the future, by any chance?
The state has got some controls, and let me just answer that question.
Okay.
Tomorrow we will meet to talk about interim administration with the state. Hopefully we'll reach an agreement, it'll come to the council will agree, and that will go on the RTAB's meeting for Wednesday. The permanent administrator, the state is paying $25,000 to do a search and use, I think, a firm with the name of a gentleman, Adams.
Tony Adams.
Tony Adams, who does municipal searches. And the administrative committee of the council, which consists of Mayor Pro Tem Keenan and then Councilman Templin and Cisco, will work with whoever the state appoints to review the applications and do the interviews. And then we don't know that it's a 1-to-1 vote, but at least at this point, they will. I don't know that it's going to be a majority or what, but in any event, we've gone through that, and we'll be very involved in the process. All right.
Is this meeting being taped?
Yes.
Okay, so that citizens that couldn't make it can know it. And then, but mostly it's just, I just hope that whoever, if we can just get back to where we were, trying to remember that this help the city improve it, make it beautiful, just make it positive and stuff. Just go try to move forward to a brighter tomorrow. So, but good job to you guys. Thank you.
Richard Hubler, 15827 Inglewood. I've already spoken to the treasurer's office about my opinion about them moving that meeting to Lansing. That was absolutely ridiculous and showed no courtesy to the people of Allen Park. I would like to know if the city attorney has read all of the orders that Parker left behind, and I assume if he has found nothing wrong with them. There may be a necessity for legal action to take a look at that, and I have already contacted an attorney who may be willing to read those over, because I understand there are some glitches in those orders. And I don't expect the council to read those orders and spot the glitches. That isn't your job. You have an attorney to do that. I would like to know if the sale or the restructuring of the bonds, the financial restructuring, is on schedule to be completed before May 1st. That is a question that you ought to figure out and find out how much it's going to cost the citizens of Allen Park if it is not restructured in time. And that's an issue that should have been brought before the state. And if they think this administrator was not derelict in their duties and subject to termination without severance, then I'd be interested in having them explain why. Or pick up the tab so the taxpayers of Allen Park don't have to pay it. There are other questions. Why are you losing all your department heads? Has the state looked into that? They interviewed these people. I know what some of them told the state. And it was not a pretty picture. And is it arrogance on the part of the state? If so, where are our senators and representatives? Because somebody ought to be bringing this thing to a head. Because this is out of line and not in compliance with the type of government that I was familiar with for 40-some years. You brought the emergency manager to this table. You had a professional city manager in place that could have brought us through this thing if the council had been willing to work with them. You chose another option. Now we're going to have to live with it, like we're going to have to pay the taxes to cover those bonds that never should have been sold in the first place. And I feel bad because it is 5 years since I stood here and warned that council what they were getting into with that Hollywood issue. And I'm right back here again, and I'm just as mad tonight as I was then. Thank you.
Mr. Hubler, if I could, to answer your first question, there's issues with the orders, without a doubt. And I reached out, I don't know if you're aware of it, but I reached out through State Senator Virgil Smith and asked for an Attorney General position on several of the orders that I myself sought legal counsel outside of our city attorneys because, as you know, as Ms. Folks being the Chief Executive Officer of the city, she has not given this mayor and council the ability to seek counsel from our city attorneys. So I sought counsel on the outside, and we put in a request to the Attorney General to challenge some of the orders. And because of the lawsuit that the retirees have with the emergency manager law, he is refusing to review that case. So we agree with you wholeheartedly up here, and we had certainly hoped that the orders, specifically the one, there's several of them, but the one that gives the administrator, chief executive officer power over the entire city, but they are refusing to do that. So I just wanted you to be aware of that.
Don't you think that the citizens are sick and tired of these payouts that have happened in Wayne County?
You know, the other item that was mentioned by the former mayor is the tender of the present 2009 A and B bonds and then their refinancing. And I talked with Treasury again today about that it's one of our major concerns. It was brought up by myself to RTAB yesterday, talked with Mr. Klein and Mr. Byrne about it at the end of that meeting. They are the Treasury officials that happen to be at that meeting. And although the window is closing in on us, there's still time to get both of those things done before the May 1st. And the importance is we did not budget $1,600,000 payment for May 1st, which is the 2009 A and B. And if we have to pay that from our budget, it will obviously change it dramatically. So they still think they're going to be able to get it done. They're the ones responsible in doing it. And so that's where we are on that. Are there any of the citizens? I see none. What I'd like to do is ask that we put the a motion for the severance settlement agreement and release before the council. And I would have the gentleman who started this matter back on January 13th be the moving and seconding parties. And then at that point, the Mayor Pro Tem said there's a couple things that he thinks should be explained to our audience and also to the council. I'll have him talk to that, and then we'll take up the debate. So if I could ask Councilman Cisco or Templin if they wish to make this motion.
I'll make that motion, Mayor.
Support.
Moved by Councilman Cisco and supported by Councilman Templin that the severance settlement agreement and release placed before us tonight be accepted by council. And we'll go to Mayor Pro Tem Keenan for he feels a few other public observations ought to be made before debate.
I just want to highlight a couple of things for you folks. I think there's a few things that are important to understand since Councilman Cisco, the mayor, and myself were the ones that were kind of in discussion with the state and with the attorney. First and foremost, as the mayor said, we feel very, very strongly that the information that we took up to Lansing showed cause for removal. We have not backed down from that one bit. Quite frankly, there's been more since that time, even for those of you that were here Tuesday night that saw the property owner next door come to a public meeting and tell us that she has not returned his phone calls nor our own Brownfield attorney's phone calls for over 3 weeks, and that we took in insurance money from the flooding claim next door that was due to them because it kind of all happened right in the transition and they remediated the area. The city took the money in and she's refusing to talk to him to give him his money. This isn't, by the way, the same guy that we're negotiating a lease with and potentially building City Hall with. So it would seem logical that we wouldn't want to start out on a bad foot, but I guess people see different things differently. So I wanted to highlight that. So the key here for a lot of those people that have been on social media saying we shouldn't pay her anything, we should give her, that there's cause, the state in their infinite wisdom, after interviewing all the department heads and everybody else, could not see that cause. Now, the mayor, Councilman Cisco, and I, we've been up to Lansing a couple times. I have not found it, but trust me, I believe somewhere there is a sign that says, check your common sense at the door when you walk into that office. That's all I can figure, because they are 100% backing their person For what reason, I don't understand. So that's the key thing I want to point out to you. The other thing is the ambiguity in Ms. Parker's orders, and I had a discussion with her yesterday about that. The order just simply says that the administrator, if we cannot show cause, which again, we just talked about, is due 6 months severance. I think this mayor and council's idea of severance is the pay. The administrator's idea of severance is everything that goes along with that. 6 months health insurance, 6 months pension payments, 6 months, what am I forgetting? Vacation time, the rest of the vacation time, all this other stuff that she believes is in that order. So I'm just sharing that with you for those of you that think we should litigate this. We could potentially go to court, drag this out another 6 months or 2 months or 1 month, whatever that would be. Meanwhile, she's still the city administrator, and she may get more, depending on how the court sees the order. So these are the things that we had to deal with in trying to come to this decision. And as I said, and I want to say that I thought that you quoted me very well in your article, we are stalled right now. This city has not moved forward in months, really weeks, months. We have to start getting back on track. As Mr. Hubler said, you know, this is a big deal with this bond tender, and we're dragging our feet. It's a big deal with the city to move over to next door and get out of this building, and we're dragging our feet right now. So I'm not going to say much more. I want to say that we felt like this was the best deal that we could get in the time frame. We got absolutely zero help, nothing but roadblocks from the state of Michigan, nothing. And I'm going to tell you, we have a conversation with them again tomorrow to talk about moving forward. As Mr. Blevins asked, I believe that we're going to hit roadblocks again tomorrow because we have a plan on what we think is the best way as the people that live in this city, that know the operation and that know the people that are working right now. We have a plan as to what we think is the best way to move forward. Now, whether the state will see that or not, again, in their infinite wisdom, who knows? But I want to be clear that they have not helped us at all. And the last thing I'm going to say is that this is the only city that I'm aware of that had an emergency manager. Two things that have happened. Number one is most cities got grants and different things to help get them out of trouble. We got nothing, all right? Make no bones about it. The state of Michigan did nothing to help us. This $25,000 that they're going to give us for this search is the first money that they've given us. And make no mistake, that's only so that they can have control. That's the one reason you're getting that money. They want control over who's going to run this place. The other thing is that, and I'm done with this. I'm sorry. I know you're looking at me like, shut up, Bob. But
I am, Bob.
Now you made me lose my train of thought. It's going to take me even longer.
Well, you could think a while about it, Bob.
All right. Well,
we could debate the issue, but I think that's where you're going.
Well, no, but I think it's important that I want the citizens to understand that I don't think anybody up here is crazy about what we're doing tonight. I don't want to speak for anybody else, but we've talked. Nobody's excited about this, but we don't want to go to court and be in worse situation and be farther, dragging our feet down the road with this. But that's all right. In my closing comments, I'll talk about the rest of it. That's the important things I wanted you folks to know. Thanks.
Not necessarily. Are we going to have comments from the council at the end?
We're going to go to the proponent of the motion and the second first, if they wish to speak to the motion, and then we'll go and ask for anybody that wishes to oppose the motion to speak. So I'll recognize Councilman Cisco, then Councilman Templin, or actually Councilman Cisco, and I'll go to opposition, and then I'll come back to Councilman Templin.
All right, well, this has been very frustrating for all of us. And I want everybody to know that as far as of what we settled on, I'm not happy with it. I wish it didn't have to happen. But the reality of our situation is this. Do you want to continue with this present city administrator? And I said this a number of weeks ago, that having her in place is going to cost us possibly hundreds of thousands of dollars. So what is the prudent thing to do? At some point, do we go to court? And I asked the mayor yesterday, we were driving back from Lansing. If we go to court, we take her to court, and this would be what court would that be again, Mayor?
Well, could be circuit, but it's not entirely clear whether she wouldn't have an employee's right to go to certain administrative hearings too.
And your answer, how long it might take to actually settle an issue like this?
Easily 6 or 8 months.
6 to 8 months. So we're looking at that. And as she is here every day, she's accruing benefits every day. So if it's 6 months from now, it's 6 months more worth of benefits plus severance. So, and as Councilman Keenan said, when we went up to Lansing, and as we had a number of conferences with them, you know, they treated like Allen Park, like they had the boot on our neck, okay? And I want everybody to know that we, in these conferences, we battled. We didn't sit there and take this. And, I mean, I literally couldn't even sit in my chair while I talked to these people. I had to, I literally had to jump around and was talking very loud. I don't want to say yelling, but I was pretty close to that. And when we were, the day after we got the letter from Deputy Treasurer Workman about the possibility of bringing an EM in because we had violated, you know, Public Act 436. And I brought that up at the end of our first meeting, which was the very next day, I believe. I said, bring it. Bring the EM in. Do it right now. And that's the kind of back and forth that we've had. We've been fighting, and not out of control fighting though. But you should know that we were in there battling, and I want to commend the mayor on all the work that he's done since we started this. He's done some extraordinary work through this whole time, day in, and as we're all involved, we've all been on the phone, we've all been doing stuff. This has really been a very trying time. Nobody's happy with this. I'm not happy with this, but I know that we will be in a better place. And the battle's not over yet. You know, this is just the first part. And what we are doing now is battling for control of our city. You're led to believe something, and then it all changes. We have not been given 1 inch other than to negotiate with our city administrator. And you have to do it. So I just want to be able to reinforce what has been said here, is that it's just been very difficult, and there's lots of things that have gone on that nobody knows about, that we could spend here, Bob, we could spend here another couple hours talking about everything that's gone on. But you have pretty much the highlights of what we've done. And we are concerned, and the bond issue is a concern, and we know that. All the issues that are brought up, we are very well aware of and have been talking about them. But it has to be a two-way conversation. At this point, it's this way. It's going this way from us. And coming back this way is not enough. And that's the way it's been from pretty much day one. So, those are my comments.
I'll take comments or statements by people who want to oppose this at this time. Do I have somebody?
I wouldn't be honest if I didn't say I oppose it. And I'd like to illustrate, perhaps for my colleagues who may not have had the same exposure to state government as I had. I worked for the state of Michigan for 4 years, many years ago, the Department of Mental Health. And then for the next 25 years, I worked in the nursing home industry, the most heavily regulated business in Michigan, with unannounced visits any given time. And I'll recall one time, the state came in, I was running a facility down in Trenton, it's called Aberdeen now, it was that time Oakwood Skilled. I came in there, the surveyors came in, and they said, your facility is in immediate jeopardy, which is a federal designation for a serious condition, a problem. Not unlike being in an emergency, I suppose, a financial emergency. And they said, you have to do these things immediately, and it's a $10,000 a day fine beginning today. And it's a minimum of 7 days fine, so that's $70,000. And my bosses at the time didn't want to fight this. They said, you know, we can't win because, you know, the state's got all the power. And we fought it. And I filed what they called at the time an informal deficiency dispute resolution process, an IDDR, they called it. You could look it up, any of you in the nursing home, go in there and ask them about it. I filled it out. I researched the federal law on, this was about bed rails. They said you can't have bed rails without certain measurements. And what they did, to make this short, they took a state rule that the state had come up with and cited us under a federal statute, which was a, you know, it's kind of a separation. This is government, this is federal government, this is state government. And it wasn't even a law, it wasn't even a rule, it wasn't in the health code or anything. It was actually titled Interim Guideline for Side Rails. It didn't even have the force of law, but they were applying it as though it were law. So what I'm trying to say is that to think and to accept that the state is to be so feared is our first error. And I say this, I fear God, I respect God. Fear of God is like respect of God. I respect the state, but I don't fear the state because they will try to convince you that they have all this authority. And yeah, they didn't find just cause. How could they? To find just cause would be to say that Joyce Parker screwed up, their designee, pointed her designee, her favorite friend or whatever. That would be tantamount to an admission that they failed. They're not going to do that. Furthermore, if you've ever worked for the state or know anybody who has, nobody gets fired in the state. They get moved around, but nobody gets fired unless you rape somebody on the job, steal all the money out of the Treasury building. You cannot get fired from the state. In most public employment, frankly, it's very hard to get fired. Think about it. How many people do we fire here? Very few. So what I'm suggesting to you, my friends, is that I don't believe we should have caved in. I agreed that we should have probably said, you're out, you go try to enforce it. Let the state sue us. Let them try to force us to keep her here. How would they do that without embarrassing themselves? You're forcing the citizens and the council vote 7-0, they don't want the person, and you're making them keep it because of some stupid order that's unintelligible to begin with. And to Mayor Hubler, I've read the orders. Most all of them make no sense. Most all of them are unenforceable. I mean, for God's sake, we designate a person with whom we have to negotiate to build a building. We create a policy that says one of us is a bully, even though we don't have that policy, but we're going to apply it retroactively. These are nonsensical. These are written by imbeciles. Frankly, nobody with any legal knowledge could write anything like that because we have a First Amendment. And just to typify the attempts of the state, I sent a simple email to Mrs. Schaefer saying, you know, I hope you get rid of folks before our next RTAB meeting because there's going to be a crowd there. And use your influence, and I'll try to use my influence to keep the crowd under control, basically. It's words to that effect. And I put it on Facebook. You can read it yourself. And so I get a call from Fred Hayden and Workman and Byrne and who's the other guy, Corizon or something. They're all in the background on the speaker. They call me at my house, conference call. They want to talk to me. He says, what did you mean by that email? I said, don't you want to read? I said, did you read it? And they said, yeah. What was your intention? I said, my intention was to communicate a concern. Were you trying to threaten Ms. Schaefer? I said, where do you read that in what I wrote? I said, were you trying to intimidate her? I said, you know, are you trying to intimidate me? And I went off on these guys, and I told him. Then he said, I suggest you don't write to Treasury anymore. And I said, you know what? You're trying to stop me from petitioning my government? I said, I don't think you want to say that, sir. He said, well, no, I'm not really. And he backed down. And they didn't talk anymore. And they let me talk for quite a while, but they didn't say anymore. But you see, if you it's like my old a Jewish friend used to say, and he said it in Yiddish, and I only wish I could speak Yiddish to say it. He said, if you let the dog on a stool, they'll want to get on a table. Well, the state was on a stool, now they're on a table. And they will stay there, and their foot will be on our neck forever and a day, because we've let it happen. And I know, with all due respect, I think the mayor probably did a good job as best he could, and Harry and Bob and everybody else. But you don't have the context with which I've been fortunate to experience. And if you don't fight, you will lose, and you'll lose and lose again. And in my industry, the nursing home industry, the nursing homes that backed off and coddled kept getting it, kept getting it, kept getting it. So I'm just telling you, I can't, in good conscience, support this, because the order itself is plain in its reading. And the state is not the final arbiter of what's good cause or not cause. It's so patently obvious that they have an interest in preserving their decision in appointing Miss Parker in the first place. And her fair-haired friend is not going to be messed with. That's what this is all about. Because any one of us, I mean, like somebody mentioned the other night, we heard 2 more examples of her blatant incompetence. So anyway, those are just a few thoughts. And again, I respect my friends. If they vote differently than me, you know, I certainly don't take it personally. But I have to live with myself, okay? And I could not support any such giveaway. I'm willing to compromise by all means. I thought we'd have to give something, but I had no clue that we'd be giving away the max plus, and that's what this is, the max plus. Thank you so much for your attention.
I'll go to Councilman Templin. Do you wish to speak at this point?
Well, most of it's been said already. I'm not happy with the agreement. It's something that anytime you negotiate, you're not going to come out feeling great about it. This is like any other contract that Mr. Couvert, you've done a great job. Thank you for all your hard work. When you negotiate a contract, I negotiated contracts with the former administrator here, and nobody comes out smelling like a rose. Nobody's happy about a contract. In this case, the state wasn't going to let us prove just cause. They weren't going to accept it. They told us we had to negotiate with her if we wanted to move forward and remove her from the city, and that's what we've done. We weren't getting the work done with her in place. We have things to do. We have a bond issue that hasn't been taken care of that we're going to have to, I know we're going to have to hustle to try to get it done by May 1st. And if it takes getting rid of an administrator that's not doing her job, that's what we're going to do, and we have to move forward with it. So that's all I have to say.
Is there anyone else that wishes at this point to speak against the matter? We want to just have any final comments by each councilman before I ask for the vote?
Just one question. Okay, go ahead, Tina.
No, go ahead,
No,
Angela.
go ahead.
No, it's okay.
All right, just one question. Don't they have to be here a certain amount of time when you give them back their employee contribution to the retirement?
No. You always get your own contributions
How
back.
about the city's contribution?
That would have been vested August 1st,
This coming August 1st or last?
this one.
So she's really not entitled to our part.
Right.
Why are we giving that to her?
Because that's one of the demands in this settlement agreement that,
Why is she staying on there to work on this bond, the pending bond and tender offer transaction? Why are we keeping her for that? Why don't
Well,
we just move ahead with that?
one of the conditions for the state to allow us to enter into a severance agreement with her and terminate her employment was that they be able to keep her through May 31st to get the tender offer and the bond refinancing done. And we did try and argue that if you want that, then maybe you should also pay for that. They didn't see it that way, but you have to realize 436 is in place, And they do have a lot of power, and the governor can look and say, if we want to just keep disobeying the rules that are set by the state and the 436 law, which is the law passed by the legislature and signed by the governor has the power to send us another EM.
Is that the total amount she's gonna get is 54.5, or is there anything else on top of that?
No, it's more than that.
It's more than 54.5,
If you
but
add in the MERS, it doesn't include the MERS.
The MERS, of course, is an amount that's been paid by the city
well, is
into her retirement account.
the MERS is a 7,000, correct?
No.
No,
There's 17,000 above the 54.5?
no, that 17,000 is the total contributions of the two parties, and ours would be 7/12 of that. So,
So what is the total gonna be that we're gonna give Mrs. Folks? What is the total? I mean, it's not 54.5 then anymore, as we spoke of earlier.
then, what did we say, 8,000?
Well, it's 54.5 that we're adding. The 17,200 or whatever is already in an account that's in her
Yes.
name that she, so it's
Yeah.
not like we're coming up with
Just-
that, but she is gonna, it's gonna be
Right.
around 71,000 total with her MERS.
It's the,
$71,000
just,
is the
no,
total.
no, but I think it's important to understand that, you know, this is a MERS defined contribution plan.
401K.
Or like a 401K where, you know, an employee puts in money and the employer puts in money. That's what this is. This is not additional funds which the city is
Mr. Wojcinski stepped up here and asked that question about what the total was, and I believe he was
Yeah.
led to believe it was 54.5.
Yeah.
That's what he was led to believe. But
yeah,
why
okay.
can't we
No,
tell him
well,
it's 71?
I said plus her MERS amount.
Well, then we should have told him what that amount is.
Okay.
Well, that's, like he said, that's money she contributed
Right.
into that account. It's,
It's all hers, the 17?
I said,
Okay,
you asked me, I said 8,000 of it is ours. The other
Right.
rest of it is hers, yeah.
okay, but we still should say what we're giving her. We're giving her
And
the
I
part
think we
that's-
will. And I did mention, you know, when I did the summary plus that account and the MERS amount. But I thank you for bringing that up.
So that's the total, 71,000, that's it? That's the total she's gonna
And then,
collect?
you know, she is doing that consulting services.
And that's gonna be on top of that, what, a couple thousand a month?
Well, it's going to depend on how much work there is, how much work she has to do.
That could be another 6, but she's under 70,000, Councilman, if you add all that. If I'm right,
We have no one else?
47.7?
Do we have no one else that can do the bond and tender offer transaction? We have nobody else that can do it? We have to have her?
This is the state, if I might interject, the state has demanded that she be part of that bond issue. This is something that's not even, you know, the only thing that was negotiable on our part was the money that she's gonna get, which is her hourly pay. The state has demanded that she be part of this bond issue, period. There's no discussion about that. I mean, that is it. And we could sit here and say, we don't want her. And then the state doesn't care. You do it or she stays. That's all there is to it. So,
I did have a
Councilwoman.
question, thank you. Since we're talking about these consulting services, I understand what you're saying, that the state wants her to stay on, but is there a way to change the dates? She's dragged her feet so many times on so many issues. What's our guarantee that she'll have it done by May 1st? And if it needs to be done by May 1st, can we change the May 31st to May 15th? I mean, is the state saying?
Once it's done, it's done. But the state is driving this. They just said she would not be paid past May 30th, no matter how long it takes them to get the job done. But the state's doing this, and you have to realize the bond rating for Allen Park is B-. As I understand it, and Mr. Cady, I think, is the one that told me, but with the state issuing this bond, it'll come off at an A- rating. So that should make a substantial reduction in the interest rate that the city will have to repay on the new bonds. And that should save us over the life of the bonds millions of dollars, really. Yeah, if you would, Mr. Katie, come forward, please.
I'm not done. I have one more.
Sure.
On the, we've had up until about 3 weeks ago, there was a weekly bond call, and there is
to answer the one question, there's a lot of consultants on these bond calls, sometimes as many as 30 people. There's treasuries involved, there's legal from Bodman, and there's a financial advisor, Baird's involved. The state is usually involved for a while, Treasury, not only Treasury, but the SEC was on the calls. It was hard to get a word in edgewise, to be honest with you. But one of the things that was resolved is that if the city would pledge revenue sharing against any failures, they would use the Michigan Bond Bank, which is what it used to be called and what it is today, to push the bonds through, which would raise our rating going through them to an A-, which will save us considerably, as the mayor was saying, on the interest of this issue. So it's a big help to do this.
And just if I could ask,
No, go ahead.
Councilwoman
You can- I don't have a question on this, I have another one, so go ahead.
all right.
I'm okay.
You know, when you talk about 30 people being on a conference call, and the point that I've been trying to make with everybody to understand the gravity of this situation, when I say we're going to be charged thousands, if not tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars, because we're dragging our feet on the bond issue. All these people, all these consultants, they get paid. When a conference call happens, guess what? The clock is ticking, all right?
Yeah.
So this is, it's not just this with her, okay? It's not just paying her this. There is a whole big picture around this that everybody sort of just needs to grab a hold of and start thinking about, of all the other things that are going on that are slow moving, if stopped, basically, that are costing us money constantly.
The good point, and I'll follow up just by saying this. The big question you have to ask yourself is, if this isn't done by May 1st, we have a bond payment due on the A and B bonds, which totals $1,588,000. Obviously, the principal is going to come off one way or another, so I wouldn't count that. But the interest on that is almost $1.1 million, because I think the principal is $500,000. The rest is interest, and that's what we would lose if this isn't completed. So I guess when you look at it that way, you say, if we really hump, we can get this done, and we'd save $1.1 million to the taxpayers. If we don't approve this, you know, we're losing that. If we do, we're only spending 47. And I know it's kind of not a way you want to look at it, but I mean, you spend a little to save a lot, is what it comes down to.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I still had a question, Mayor.
Yeah, I've been,
Okay, right, Tina, go ahead.
Thank
I wasn't done, we're way off the clock.
well, she had the floor, and she had two questions, and I wanted to let her
Go
get her
ahead,
second
Tina.
question, and then we'll come back to you, all right?
Yes.
Is there a reason why the state, I mean, I know we're under state rule and stuff, but why are they going to be part of our search for a new city administrator? I mean, why are they paying us $25,000 to do a search when why can't we go through the normal process? And maybe because I know we're under their control and everything else, but, I mean, we didn't go that way when Ms. Parker picked Ms. Folks, and if they really wanted to give us the $25,000, can we do it our normal way and put the $25,000 towards her doggone settlement? I don't know. I just don't understand. We have qualified people if we're using our HR services and.
They started out that they were going to pick our new administrator.
Oh, okay.
And we got it down to, we want to be part of the selection. You pay the cost to bring in the recipients, and our administrative committee, as I said, of Mayor Pro Tem Keenan,
Right.
And Councilman Cisco, and that would work with whoever Treasury is assigning to that task in doing the review of the applications and then the interviews.
So,
We haven't gotten to the end as to whether we both have to be in agreement on the candidates, or whether there's an order of the candidates. If we select number one and they select number two, do we then have one be the city administrator and ours be the deputy, or ours be vice versa? We're still trying to push on that, but we're not down to a selection of people either.
So they're giving us 20, they're gonna give us up to 25,000, or they're
Up
gonna?
to, up
Up
to.
to.
And just to add
To
to
do
that-
advertising and stuff? I mean, maybe I missed out on that.
Just to add to, it's to hire a search firm, but just to add to that, we asked the question because, quite honestly, Ms. Gavricki, they just did a search for Highland Park. And they claimed that they found all these great people. And we said, well, if you just did a search within the last few months, why are we doing another one? You got all these great people, right? I mean, let's stack them up to what, you know, what we want and go that route. But they're, you know, as the mayor said, they're holding all the cards. We didn't see any sense in having the search like that either, and we fought them on it, and it was one of the.
I mean, if
one
they're
of the
really
things that
willing
they
to spend
said.
$25,000 and give it to the city for the.
And just so
the
you know, we did
difficulties.
ask them, we told them that we thought since we had no part in hiring Ms. Folks, that they should pay her severance, and they laughed at us. They
Okay.
literally laughed at us.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was mentioned a number of times, that the state should pay for her pay on the way out.
Okay, let's,
Thank
I mean, I indicated I'd come back to Councilman DiGiulio.
Okay,
Councilman,
we're gonna pay her 10 hours a week, not to exceed 10 hours a week, at $52.50 an hour. So that comes to what, $522 a week we're gonna pay her?
right,
So it's $2,000 a month.
If she works it.
Up to.
Well, up to, but I mean,
Yeah.
chances are she will work it, right?
close to,
I mean,
well,
Why wouldn't she?
we're going to, she's got to send in the item. We're going to ask Treasury for a check on the hours. That's the best we can do with it.
Would she be
Councilman.
working out of City Hall here?
No. We do get
She's working here.
little bits and pieces.
Okay.
She's good. Okay.
I'm sorry.
I didn't
know
that. Okay.
Somebody,
Nope, I'm fine.
Where will she be working from? We don't
we
know.
weren't too concerned as long as it wasn't here.
Okay.
It's the only way I can express it, I guess, at this point.
I will confirm, Mayor, that she hasn't asked to rent any of my properties.
I heard she was looking to move in on Manor.
Okay, come on.
Mayor, if I could
It's
just.
getting to be the silly hour here.
Well, I just want to make one comment, and I'll be done, and you can, you know, we can sit up here and pontificate, and maybe you thought what I did earlier was that I was trying to be helpful, but I wanted to let you know that when this council, after Councilman Cisco and Councilman Templin met with Ms. Folks and Ms. Parker, let me just mind, I think the mayor left Ms. Parker out. The initial meeting was with the two of them when they asked her to resign. I think that's an important fact. So she was in on the discussion from day one. But when we waited 2 weeks to 3 weeks and finally felt like we weren't going anywhere, and we decided to make that motion, or they did, and it was 7-0 to remove the administrator. And as you said, and it was in the newspaper and everywhere else, the state immediately came down and said, it's null and void, as the mayor said. I did not hear anybody up here, lawyer or not lawyer, or anybody say, I'm going to go out and file an injunction, or I'm going to file this, or I'm going to file that. You know, this 11th hour quarterbacking up here saying, you know, we should have filed this, and when I was in this job, I filed this and I filed that. Nobody filed anything. Nobody said the state didn't have the authority to nullify, and that we were going to change the locks on City Hall here and lock Ms. Folks out, and we could do that and let them sue us. You know, none of that was ever said. It's really easy to say that kind of stuff now when we're sitting up here trying to vote on a severance package. But through this whole process that's gone on for quite some time, nobody, with the exception of what the mayor asked, I don't want to sound like anybody should have, but the mayor asked the three of us so that we didn't have a quorum to negotiate with the state. But nobody's gone upon themselves, as Mr. Hubler said. I mean, I went and sought legal counsel to try to get the Attorney General as an opinion and stuff like that. Nobody up here that's an attorney or non-attorney sought to do anything to help move us forward in this predicament. So to come up here now and talk about we should have or I should have and all that stuff, it's a little late in the day.
Well, I'd just remark that my good friend, Mr. Keenan, my good friend, the mayor, and Mr. Cisco weren't entirely all that communicative about this process, and maybe they were fearful of violating some state law or something, but I guess when we saw the letter come back almost instantly about the EM, and then they backed off of that shortly after that, that might have been a clue that we had some room if we wanted to push hard enough. But then again, some of us were not involved in the process, and we didn't want to muddle up the works, I guess. So, you know, I don't want to. I don't know, Bob. Always have a desire to try to throw a blanket over somebody who's trying to just voice a concern and tell you what his experience is. I'm not trying to. I'm just suggesting that you make it sound as though there was never a chance. There's never a chance. There's still not a chance. When I said everything I sent to the mayor and to everybody, I communicated mainly with the mayor. I said, don't give a dime, fight this thing, let her sue for it. So I don't know what else I can do. I mean, if you want to say that I didn't do anything, that's fine. But the point is, you know, you got to have the intestinal fortitude to stand up to somebody. And I know you might have fought them and you might have thought you were swinging pretty hard, but they may not have been hard enough punches. You know, that's all I'm saying. I wasn't involved. I wasn't invited to be a part of it. So I guess maybe I don't know what you said up there. I have to take your word for it.
I was talking specifically about the letter that came back. If you wanted to challenge it, you're an attorney. It's totally within your right to go down and file an injunction if you'd like to, instead of just talking about it.
Well, let's,
No, I don't think that's.
but I will say this, Councilman Hayes, through all your remarks about your personal experience, and you said, the one thing that really struck me was, it's almost impossible to fire a government employee. Now, I don't know where we were at. You weren't a government employee that you were dealing with, but we are dealing with a government employee. So let's be realistic and understand that we have those problems to deal with.
But let me just say this.
It was not the mayor nor the mayor pro tem that thought emergency managers was the way to solve this city's problems. And you sat there and said it was. And finally, after 2 years of this abysmal thing that we've been under, you had to say, gosh, I shouldn't have done that.
I never
So,
said that.
You did say that at an open meeting, and if I have to go
May I
get
have a point of
that.
order? Can we call the question?
No, I'm sorry.
I don't know if I can have the floor or not.
Accused me
Oh,
of.
I'm
Can we
sorry.
just call the question?
You want to call the question?
I would like to call the question,
Now,
please.
you just said something, Mayor, that I think is inaccurate. I've said consistently that I never objected, because when I talked to Parker when she
Question,
arrived
you
here,
know, it's
Point
been
of order.
called, you spoke, I challenged you.
and you
That's where we
challenged
stand.
me in error too, sir.
Thank you, sir. I think we've concluded that, and I'm going to ask for the vote. All in favor of the motion for the severance settlement agreement and release, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
No.
No.
The vote is 5-2, and the two dissenting votes are Mr. Hayes and Mr. DiGiulio. We have a second issue because of the MERS plan contribution in there, and I'll have the city's council explain it to us, please.
Okay. So as part of this severance package, this would involve an amendment to the existing MERS defined contribution plan, wherein we would ask, and this is how I'd phrase the motion to approve the amendment to the MERS defined contribution plan to provide for immediate vesting for employees, for the employee and employer portions for the city administrator position.
You've heard the,
So I would need a motion.
the motion we would need in order to comply with the severance agreement. So do I have somebody to make that motion, please?
Motion.
Motion by Councilwoman Gavarecki.
Support for purpose of discussion.
Councilman DiGiulio has supported for the MERS resolution. Discussion, please.
Mr. Attorney, I'm trying to, is this an ad hoc to this administrator only, or to all future administrators?
This would apply to all administrators, so if you did not want it to apply to other administrators, we would then have to do an amendment to change this. And I really think council should think about it. It may be a good thing to keep in place all the time. Many employers have immediate vesting for the employer portion. However, reasonable minds can differ on this. I think that's something council should think about. So for today, this definitely would apply to this situation, and I think this does need to pass because it is part of the severance agreement. And then the next matter will be, at some point, council should consider whether or not they want this to apply to city administrators in the future. It is a bit of a carrot for a new city administrator.
So just so I'm clear, it would be that the employer portion contribution would be immediately vested for anybody at the administrator level.
Right,
That's
that's
how the
correct.
plan would change.
City administrator.
City administrator
So that one singular title.
position, yes.
Okay, thank you.
And so it would, the employee portion and the employer portion.
And just for the sake of the audience, the employee pays in 5% of their pay into that 401K or MERS plan. The city matches at 7%. So right now, as it's written, the employee would have to be here 2 years in order to have the city matching part of it. Moving forward, we wouldn't do that. For those people that came up, talked about getting away from defined benefit pensions to 401Ks, it's been very difficult for us. The city administrators cut pay and benefits, and the emergency manager. It's getting difficult to be able to get good people. Our police officers are going to other cities because they're all making more money. They've just been, so it is kind of a carrot, but it is money that's automatically put into an account. When they leave, they just take that portion with them. If we didn't want to do that, we would have to take it back from them. It's already given, so it's a little bit different than, it's put into their 401K plan already.
Any other comments?
Question.
Councilman Templin.
The money that's in MERS, MERS is going to give us the money out of that plan
No,
to pay her?
no, she gets that directly from the plan,
She gets the money
directly from the plan.
from the plan?
Correct.
Our share and her share?
Well, they're both her shares. It's
I
just-
don't, but
Right.
our share that's been in her.
That
in her
would have
name.
vested in August.
Okay. And what happens if MERS doesn't want to give the money at this?
No, they said it's fine.
Oh, you've already talked to
Oh,
MERS?
certainly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is that
In
resolution
fact,
is
that's their
theirs.
prototype. I got the plan here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, why are we,
Thanks.
why are we giving this to any future city administrators? Why are
Well-
we doing that? Why are we changing that?
That's not a discussion on the table tonight. I mean, we can go at the next meeting if you want to put an agenda item that you want to change it, but it isn't likely to apply.
But we're talking about it tonight. We've said that.
Well, we're talking about it because it's part and parcel of this agreement, so we have to make a change to open it up. And we can
We're not
make a
making that agreement
motion
tonight. We're just-
at another meeting to close it.
So we're just doing Ms. Folks tonight.
Sure, that's
Okay.
correct.
Thank you.
Is, one question further for council or the mayor perhaps, or any of our colleagues here. I'm thinking I read an order of Ms. Parker's that may conflict with this, but I don't know if you know, Joe, or anybody else. There seemed to be something about having to work 5 years to vest or something like that. So if the orders are so superior to any other law in the land, I wonder if our little transaction here will have an impact on it.
Well, we're certainly going to find out Wednesday or Thursday. Because she sits there, and the original motion when we moved to suspend was to say that she had a conflict of interest and shouldn't be voting on this issue, but that won't be our decision come next Wednesday or Thursday. Any other questions by council? I'm going to call for the vote on the MERS. All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
No.
No.
5-2 vote, again show that Councilman Hayes and DeGiulio voted no.
Motion to adjourn.
Moved by
Support.
Mayor Pro Tem Keenan to adjourn, supported by Mayor, Councilwoman Gavarecki. I'll ask, all in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We are adjourned at 8:22.
Thank you all for coming.
Yes. Can I oppose this, Mayor, now that I think I vote opposed going home?